Yeah, g'day guys. Landcruiser 80 series. Mine's 93 petrol. Just a bit of update on this steering box. If you have a lot of play in your steering, a lot of people say it's a sector shaft and the teeth meshing on the piston. As you can see there, if you grab the input from your steering and just slowly rotate that, you can see there's pretty much no play. Okay, it's not always a sector shaft. What you may find, like mine, the play is actually in here. So if I turn that, you will find the sector shaft isn't even moving. Okay, nor's the piston. So the play is in this shaft, in this mac here. This is where your hydraulics for your piston is. Your piston's up and down in here, of course. So you've got play between that and the piston teeth. So just about, I don't know, a few million that actually gave me about half a steering wheel of play. So it's quite a lot when you're going up the other end at the steering. So we're going to pull this apart again. I just put a seal kit in it last week and still had a lot of play. A lot of people adjust this. That might help a little bit, but it's not always the case. So let's pull it apart and see how we go. Right, okie dokie. So a lot of people freak out. They undo these 4 bolts for the piston assembly. Ball bearings fall out everywhere. As you can see, mine haven't. All you've got to do is remove the lock plunger, which is this little gadget down there. Wind the piston, okay, this one, so it goes all the way as far as it can go over here. Then pull this out in one piece. Okay, now unfortunately I've got to get into this, so yeah, I've got to undo this. The bearings fall out. But if you're ever just in here and you want to do the seal, do whatever you want to do with the rest of the box, and you don't need to pull this apart, you can do it without dropping the bearings. Okay, rightio, piston off. When I did the seal kit last week, which I did because the input seal was leaking as usual, I forgot to scribe this. So this is the preload. You can see a couple of marks here. They were actually from pliers undoing this ring. So they weren't actually scribed. So when I put it back together, I had no idea where I was. So I've just discovered, I haven't undone it. I've actually tried to tighten it back up again, and I've almost gone 2 complete revolutions. So obviously it just wasn't tight enough. So I'll wind it down till I can't go no further. Back her off a bit, see how we go, see if that gets rid of my play. Okay. Tightened her up, far as she'll go. Got about another 6 turns out of that, so obviously way too loose. So I've gone full tightness and backed it off about half a turn between these two. So I've turned that from here to about here when I back it off. Okay, just getting these bearings back in. What I find the easiest way, just drop one in, thin hole punch, just keep poking them in, and they'll work their way all the way through till they start coming up the other side. And then the ones that left over, they go in that tube just with a bit of grease. As you just screws back together, piece of cake. So I've just put the ball bearings into the little carrier. There's roughly 11, so that's how many I had left over. So I just used that little punch there, punched them in there, and they start coming out. You can just see the other ones coming out the other end. So what we'll do, we'll put a bit of moly grease on that, smother those, that'll hold it all together, stick it on, a couple of screws, and she's ready to go back together. I thought I'd just jump in before I put this back together. This is my sector shaft, 430,000 Ks old, and I reckon, other than the most minimalistic wear, that's pretty good. Now if you look at the top of the teeth, okay, this phone's not a real crash shot, sorry, but they taper, okay, so they taper at the back, so thin here, and as it runs down it gets thicker, wider I should say. That's where this adjustment comes into play. As you wind this down, it pulls this whole shaft upwards, and the idea is on the piston teeth it starts to jam as it gets wider. That takes the play out. but if you go too tight, she jams too hard, and when you go to turn, she'll bind. So be careful of that, okay? Don't go crazy with that adjustment. Okay, piston back in. Bolts tighten, 4 bolts. Now, as we can see, piston going up and down, no problem. Okay, what you do is you center the middle tooth just here. Sorry if the lighting's not real crash on, that's a bit better. And then you put your sector shaft in. Now I can't tell just by turning this if I got rid of my play. It has to be under load, so I need to put the sector shaft in and then turn this to see if I had that play I had earlier. If I sort of hold this with one hand, because I've got the camera in the other, but if I had 2 hands and I try and hold that and then turn this, it still won't show you the play. All right, it won't give you a real estimate of what's going on. So we'll get the sector shaft in, we'll lock it all down, see if I got the play. All right, sector shaft back in. Now we are exactly where we were when we first started, and I was showing you how much play I had in this without that sector shaft moving. Now, if I try and turn this at all, there is no play whatsoever, okay? There is absolutely, well, that's how much play I got. Before, I probably had 6 or 7 of those teeth going all the way around, either way. So there's no play at all. And I haven't got the top on and haven't done this adjustment. That would even get this better. It doesn't need to be. But we'll adjust it when we get all that together. But I can tell just by now, that's fixed. Okay? So we'll put it all back together and see how she goes. Just an interesting point. When you adjust this screw, so you can see what's going on, you'll see the sector shaft as I wind the screw in. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually starting to move down. Okay? Whoops. I'll just try that again. In fact, hang on a sec. I'll just jam that under there. So yeah, as you wind the screw down, the sector shaft will start moving as well. And as you back the screw off, you can see it starting to go back up. See? There it goes. So that's the adjustment. So when you wind that screw down, you're forcing this down, which is forcing the taper on those gears I said before to jam into the piston gears a bit harder. So if you go too hard and wind that in, and this comes down as you wind it, you'll end up binding in there where your sector shaft teeth meet your piston teeth. It's like chucking a wedge under a door. You'll jar it. So I just go in till it gets a bit hard to turn and back it off a tad. But then we'll try it in the truck anyway. Okay. Alright, one thing I'll point out, pitman arm, how to get that off. Okay, I've got a 12-ton press. I could not get it off. It was just seized on as usual. Bit of rust. So how do I get it off? Well, I hit it with a blowtorch. It did nothing as well. So what I did, and I've done it twice, undo the 4 bolts and a 17mm sector shaft nut, and then take this housing out. Of course, the only thing stopping the sector shaft now going that way is the pitman arm. I've got my nut off, of course, because I'm putting this back together. So take the top off, undo the nut so it's level flush with here, with the end of the shaft, and I just use that small mush hammer and about 6 good belts where it is now, sitting on the bench. It will force the sector shaft up and close this gap up, and as you keep hitting this, the pressure against there and there pops it off. It actually comes off really easy. It's surprising. If you tip the thing upside down to do that, that shaft, or the top of the sector shaft, the thread will be sticking out, and you'll bugger it because you'll be on the surface. It won't be level. You can probably maybe put a couple of bricks either side, but you're taking the life in your own hands there. That's all I do. Undo the nut so it's level with the thread, so you don't bugger the thread, and take that top off. A couple of hits with the hammer, and mate, they just pop off. It's quite surprising.